Ariella Foster shoved open the hotel room door, heels in one hand, purse dangling from the other, and muttered, "Finally," as she stumbled into what she thought was her suite. She didn't notice the tailored suit jacket on the chair, or the low jazz music humming from the speaker on the nightstand, or the fact that her suitcase wasn't by the door. She did, however, notice the man. He stepped out of the bathroom, drying his short dark hair with a white towel. His chest was bare, sculpted like some kind of Greek statue, and his expression twisted into confusion as he froze mid-step. Ariella also froze. Who are you?" he asked, voice deep, clipped, and very much not amused. She blinked. "Who am I? Who are you? This is my room." He glanced toward the door, then back at her. "This is room 1615, she squinted. "No, it's 1620. "I'm in 1620. "You're in 1615, he said flatly. She turned to look at the room number on the door, 1615. "Oh my God," she whispered, heat rising to her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, I swear, I thought." She backed up toward the door, mortified. "I must've. The key must've." "You got in with your key?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. She held up the plastic card. "It worked. I swear it worked." He eyed the key, then glanced at the phone on the desk. "They've been having issues with the locks all week." "You're not the first." Ariella let out a breath, still hovering by the door. "I'm really sorry. I had a horrible day. I got soaked in the rain, my suitcase broke, and I was stuck at a company meeting I wasn't supposed to be in for 3 extra hours. His eyes narrowed slightly. "You're here for the marketing summit," she nodded. "Yeah, kind of forced to be. My boss thought it would be good exposure for me." He stepped toward the minibar and pulled out a bottle of sparkling water. "You want one?" She hesitated. "After I just broke into your hotel room." "I'd hardly call it breaking in if the lock let you in." She gave him a small, embarrassed smile and walked barefoot across the carpet, taking the bottle. "Thanks. Shower's free, by the way," he added casually. Her eyes widened. "What? You look like you've had a day," he said, sitting on the arm of the couch, "and you're still soaked." She glanced down at her rain-streaked dress. "It's fine, I'll just go to the right room this time," but she didn't move. There was something about the way he looked at her, calm, composed, but curious. Most men would have kicked her out. He seemed entertained. "I'm sorry again," she finally said. "I swear I'm not a crazy person, just a very, very tired one." He held out his hand. "Spencer O'Connell." Her fingers curled around his, warm and firm. "Ariella Foster." He didn't let go right away. "Nice to meet you, Ariella Foster," she laughed, dropping her gaze, despite the circumstances, especially because of them. She looked up, surprised. He stood, nodding toward the door. "Let me walk you to your actual room, just in case you accidentally wander into someone else's suite." "Thanks," she said, grabbing her heels. "I'll try not to barge into yours again." As they stepped into the hallway, she asked, "So, are you here for the summit too?" He paused for half a second. "Something like that." The next morning, Ariella stared at the conference stage, heart stopping when Spencer O'Connell walked across it in a navy suit like he owned the place, because apparently he did. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host said, "we're honored to welcome the CEO of O'Connell Enterprises, Mr. Spencer O'Connell." CEO, she nearly choked on her coffee. The man whose hotel room she broke into. The man who handed her water and offered her his shower. The man who walked her to her door like a gentleman. He wasn't another guest. He owned half the companies attending this summit. After his keynote speech, confident, sharp, and way too attractive, she tried to disappear into the crowd, but he found her. "You didn't tell me you worked for Lyra Tech," he said, stopping beside her by the catering table. "You didn't tell me you were a CEO," she shot back. He grinned. "I didn't want to scare you off." "You think I scare that easily?" He tilted his head, amused. "Do you?" She grabbed a small plate of fruit and turned to face him. "I'm not scared, just surprised." "Good, because I was hoping to see you again." She blinked. "Seriously," he leaned in a little. "You're the only interesting thing that's happened all week." She stared at him, the noise of the room fading slightly. "Have dinner with me," he said. "You're not worried it'll look bad?" she asked. You dating someone from a smaller partner company?" His eyes locked on hers. "I'm not worried about appearances." She hesitated, then said, "Okay, one dinner." That night, he picked her up in a sleek black car with a driver. He held the door open for her like it was second nature. The restaurant was on the rooftop of a high-rise, all-glass walls and candlelight. The kind of place she'd only ever seen in movies. She stared at the menu. There were no prices. "Seriously?" she whispered. "Order whatever you want," he said, barely glancing at his. "I don't even know what half of this is," he laughed. "Then we'll try everything." They shared plates, drank wine, and talked for hours. She told him about growing up in a small town in Oregon, how she'd always wanted to design things that mattered. He told her about starting his company in college and how he barely slept those first few years. "You're not what I expected," she said, sipping her wine. "What did you expect? Someone colder, arrogant maybe, or fake?" "And what am I?" he asked, leaning closer. "Still deciding," she said playfully. His eyes searched hers. "Fair." When he walked her back to her room, they paused by the door. "I had a great time," she said softly. "So did I." He leaned in, brushing his lips against hers, slow and gentle. She didn't pull away. When he stepped back, he whispered, "Don't forget which room is yours tonight." She smiled, flushed. "I won't." Except she did, because by the next morning, she wasn't just thinking about her room, she was thinking about him. Ariella adjusted her blazer with trembling fingers as she stepped into the elevator the next morning. She couldn't stop replaying the kiss. It had been slow, deliberate, the kind that made her forget the hallway still had a motion sensor light flickering overhead. Everything about Spencer O'Connell was unexpected, sharp yet disarming, private but never cold, and now impossibly close and utterly complicated. She was supposed to be focused on the final workshop of the summit, something about integrated brand ecosystems, but her head was spinning with thoughts she couldn't afford. She needed to go back to being the woman who triple-checked project timelines and color codes her inbox. Not the woman who let a billionaire kiss her in a hallway less than 24 hours after mistaking his suite for her own. The elevator doors opened, and she barely made it 2 steps into the lobby before a woman with sleek auburn hair and a clipboard intercepted her. "Ariella Foster? Yes, you've been reassigned to the executive breakout session upstairs." "I didn't sign up for that one," Ariella said, confused. The woman gave a tight smile. "You were requested." Ariella hesitated. "By who?" But the woman was already turning, expecting her to follow. The room upstairs was smaller, more intimate. It had only a dozen seats, each with a leather folder embossed with the O'Connell Enterprises logo. She moved toward the back, trying to stay unnoticed. But the minute she chose a seat, she felt the awareness that someone was watching her. Spencer stood at the front, casually discussing upcoming industry shifts with 2 other executives. He looked up and their eyes met. His expression didn't change, but the air between them did, like a held breath. She looked away first. When the session ended, most attendees lingered, eager to network. Ariella moved toward the door, but Spencer was already there. "You didn't ask," he said. "For what?" "Why I requested you for this session." She crossed her arms. "You think I wouldn't notice?" "I was hoping you would." She glanced around. "People are watching." He leaned slightly closer. "Let them." "You don't care, do you?" she asked quietly. "About how this might look. I care about what I want." "And what is that exactly?" "I'm still figuring that out," he said, voice low. "But I know it includes you." She stared at him, pulse racing. "We barely know each other." "Then let's change that." He didn't wait for her to answer. That evening, a handwritten note was slid under her door. No text, no logo, just her name across the front and a delicate invitation inside. Dinner, not at a restaurant, at his suite. She stood outside his door an hour later, heart pounding. When he opened it, she almost forgot how to speak. The suite had been transformed. A private chef was at work in the open kitchen, and soft instrumental music played from hidden speakers. A table was set by the window, overlooking the city lights. "You didn't have to do all this," she said, stepping inside. "I wanted to," he replied, taking her coat. You've been surviving on conference catering and secondhand coffee, she laughed. You've been paying attention. I always do. Dinner was surreal. Roasted sea bass with saffron risotto. Wine that tasted like it had been aged in a secret European vault, conversation that never stalled. So, she said, setting down her glass, what's the catch? He looked genuinely curious. Catch? You're the kind of man who could date anyone. Models, heiresses, executives. And here I am, a junior brand consultant from a company you probably forgot existed until yesterday. You're wrong, he said. I knew exactly who you were before you stepped into my room, her breath caught. You did. I make it a point to know the companies we consider acquiring. Her fork paused halfway to her plate. Acquiring, he nodded. Lyra Tech's on our radar. You didn't mention that before. I didn't think it would matter. It does, she said, carefully setting her fork down. It changes everything. I disagree. You don't see how this looks. You invite me to executive sessions, private dinners, and now you're telling me my company's being reviewed for acquisition. I'm telling you because I want you to know I have nothing to hide. She stood, suddenly needing space. This could ruin me, Spencer. What could? If anyone thinks she exhaled, getting close to you for leverage, or worse, that you're using me to influence internal decisions. I would never, but it won't matter, she cut in. Perception is everything in this industry. He stood too, his tone intensifying. Then tell me how to fix it. You can't, she whispered. Because it isn't possible, not if you're involved with my company, his jaw tightened. So what are you saying? I'm saying, she said, her voice shaking. I need space to think. She grabbed her coat, avoiding his eyes, and left before he could follow. The elevator ride down felt like falling. Back in her room, Ariella stared at the ceiling, her stomach twisting. She hadn't lied. There was no easy way to navigate a relationship when the balance of power was so skewed. But what hurt more was how much she already missed him. The next day, she tried to keep her distance. She buried herself in panels, sat in the back row, skipped the networking brunch. But late afternoon, her name was called over the hotel's intercom. Miss Ariella Foster, please report to the concierge desk. Confused, she made her way there. A concierge smiled politely. There's a car waiting for you outside. I didn't order a car. It's been arranged by Mr. O'Connell, she hesitated. Where is it taking me? He handed her a card. One line, handwritten, you said you needed space. I'm giving you a whole rooftop. She stepped outside. A sleek black car waited at the curb. The driver opened the door without speaking. The drive took only 5 minutes. When she stepped out, she saw a rooftop garden, lit by hanging lanterns and city light. At the center, a single table and Spencer standing beside it. She didn't move. He raised a hand in quiet invitation. She walked forward slowly, her heart louder than her footsteps. I don't want to be a complication for you, he said as she reached him. I want to be a choice. She swallowed hard. I didn't expect you to fight for this. Then you don't know me yet. I'm afraid, she admitted, of losing what I've worked for. I'd never let that happen. You can't promise that. I can promise to never put you in a position that makes you question yourself. His voice was steady. But I won't pretend I don't want you in my life. Ariella stared at him, then looked at the garden around them. It was quiet, safe, like a pause in a world that wouldn't stop spinning, and for the first time since this all began, she didn't feel like she was falling. She felt like she might be choosing. The rooftop dinner had ended without a kiss. Not because the air lacked heat or the moment lacked meaning, but because Ariella had needed time, and for once, Spencer hadn't tried to control the outcome. He had watched her leave quietly, his expression unreadable, but his restraint had said more than any words. And that, more than anything, had shaken her. 3 days later, the summit was over. The banners were taken down, the lobby buzzing with rolling suitcases and early checkouts. Ariella stood by the glass revolving doors, her badge already tossed in the waste bin, her fingers clenched around the handle of her repaired suitcase. She hadn't seen Spencer since that night. No rooftop notes, no surprise dinners, just silence. She was halfway across the polished marble floor when a voice called her name, low, urgent, and unmistakably his. Ariella. She turned. Spencer was walking toward her, no suit this time. Just dark jeans, a jacket, and a tension in his shoulders she hadn't seen before. "I was hoping you wouldn't leave before I said goodbye," he said. "I wasn't planning to sneak out," she answered, unsure how to meet his eyes. "Then why didn't you call me?" "I didn't know what I'd say," he nodded, stepping closer. "You gave me space, I gave you time." "What did you figure out?" She looked down at her suitcase, then back at him. "That I was scared for the wrong reasons," his brow lifted. "Go on." "I thought being with you would undermine everything I've worked for, that people would stop seeing me and only see you, and now," I realized I was already doing that to myself. He didn't touch her, didn't rush her, just waited. "I don't want to disappear into someone else's shadow," she said, "but I also don't want to walk away from something that feels different." "It is different," he said, voice quieter now. "You're not just someone I noticed, you're someone I can't seem to stop thinking about." She studied him, her heart thudding against her ribs. "Then why haven't you reached out?" "Because I didn't want to push. I've spent years making decisions before others could, controlling outcomes before they could surprise me. I didn't want to do that with you." Her throat tightened. "There's a gallery opening tonight," he added. "One of our foundation sponsors is unveiling a new collection. Come with me." "That sounds very public." "It is, I want you there anyway," she hesitated. "And if I say no, I'll respect it, but I'll still ask again tomorrow." A smile tugged at her lips. "You always get what you want, don't you?" "Not always," he said. "Some things are worth waiting for." That night, she stood in front of her hotel mirror, zipping up the only dress she had that wasn't meant for work functions. It wasn't designer and it didn't scream wealth, but it made her feel like herself. And when the car arrived, she stepped inside without second-guessing it. The gallery was sleek and modern, walls of white, glass ceilings, and a courtyard filled with abstract sculptures that glowed under soft lighting. Photographers lingered at the entrance, snapping shots of donors and city elites. Ariella hesitated on the sidewalk, watching. Spencer appeared beside her, his hand brushing hers. "You're here." "I said I would be," he offered his arm. "Then let's go in." Inside, the space was filled with champagne flutes and polite applause. Ariella let her eyes wander to the art mixed media pieces, some unsettling, others strangely calming. She didn't recognize a single artist name, but Spencer paused at each piece with genuine interest. "You actually like this stuff," she whispered, half teasing. "I do," he said. "This gallery sponsors inner-city art programs. They use part of the proceeds to fund student grants. You really know how to make capitalism look good." He leaned in, voice low. "And you're really good at making me laugh at a fundraiser." She smiled, but before she could respond, a woman in a satin jumpsuit appeared beside them. "Spencer. You disappeared after the board meeting." He turned, polite but distant. "Just stepped out for a moment." Her gaze flicked to Ariella. "And who's this?" Before Ariella could open her mouth, Spencer answered. "This is Ariella Foster. She's with me." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Ah, I see." Ariella felt the shift, subtle but unmistakable. The glance, the tone, the silent calculation of whether or not she belonged. But Spencer's hand found hers, warm and steady. "Excuse us," he said, gently steering Ariella away. "She's not worth your energy." "I wasn't bothered. You were." She looked up at him. "You're used to that world. I'm not. You don't need to be. You're not here to impress them." "Then why am I here?" He stopped near a sculpture of twisted metal and glass, his eyes searching hers. "Because I wanted the woman who walked into my hotel room by mistake to be the one who walks into my life on purpose." She didn't answer right away. Her fingers tightened around his. "I'm not going to be easy," she said finally. "I'll question everything, I'll overthink, I'll challenge you." "Good," he said. "I'm tired of being agreed with." She shook her head, laughing under her breath. "You have no idea what you're getting into." "I think I do." A ripple of applause rose from the other side of the room as a curator stepped up to speak. Spencer glanced over but didn't move. "I want to show you something," he said, leading her through a side hallway and up a narrow staircase that opened onto a private terrace. The city stretched out below them, lights shimmering like they were trying to touch the stars. A small table was already set, 2 glasses, a bottle of wine, and a view that looked like it belonged in a magazine. "I thought we were here for the gallery," she said, stunned. "We were, but I also had this waiting." She turned to him, speechless. He poured the wine, handed her a glass, and clinked it gently against hers. To unexpected beginnings, she met his gaze. And to not running away the second things get real, they drank in silence. Then he set his glass down and stepped closer. "I want this," he said, voice low, steady. "The dinners, the late nights, the arguments, I want you." She didn't move. "I know it won't be simple, but I've built my life around control, and for once I want something that makes me feel out of it." She reached up, resting her hand against his chest. "Then stop thinking and kiss me." He did, and this time there was no hesitation. Ariella couldn't stop touching the pendant at her neck. Spencer had slipped it into her hand the night before, just before they left the gallery terrace. No big speech, no dramatic reveal. Just a quiet moment, his fingers brushing hers as he said, "This made me think of you." It was delicate, a small silver compass with a single sapphire set in the center. She hadn't asked if it was expensive. She didn't have to. Now, sitting in her new office at Lyra Tech's temporary headquarters in Manhattan, the result of a newly inked partnership that had nothing to do with acquisitions, but everything to do with expansion, she ran her thumb over the charm again. The rest of the team was still adjusting to the move, but for her, it already felt like the beginning of something permanent. A knock pulled her from her thoughts. Spencer stepped inside without waiting for her to answer, holding a coffee in one hand and a folded newspaper in the other. "You realize I have meetings today, right?" she asked, standing. "I checked your calendar." "Of course you did." He held out the coffee. "You're out of the caramel blend you like. I had them bring more in." She took the cup, lifting a brow. "You're not trying to bribe me, are you? If I was, it would involve breakfast. You already sent breakfast." "That was just because you skipped dinner last night." Ariella narrowed her eyes. "You're keeping tabs on my meals now. I'm investing in your well-being." She tried not to laugh. "Is that what we're calling it?" He stepped closer, the newspaper still tucked under his arm. "Are you nervous about today?" "Only mildly." "It's not every day you pitch a multi-million-dollar campaign to a room full of people who think you still answer phones. They'll listen. And if they don't, then I'll fire them." She stared at him. He shrugged. "What? I'm kidding." "You're not." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "You're not here because of me. You're here because you're brilliant, and because you see things people miss." She swallowed hard. "That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. I haven't even started." He handed her the newspaper, opening it to a page with a full-color photo of the gallery event. She was in it beside him, laughing, a glass of wine in her hand. "Front page of the business section," he said. "You look incredible." She scanned the caption. "They called me your mystery guest. They'll learn your name soon enough." Ariella folded the paper and set it aside. "That's the problem. I don't want to be a headline." "You won't be." "Not if you don't want." "And if I want to be more than that?" she asked. "Not just the woman beside the CEO, but someone who built something real. Then we build it together." She looked at him for a long moment. "You mean it?" "I've never said anything to you I didn't mean." The door opened again, this time without a knock. Her assistant, Clara, peeked in. "They're ready for you in the Marlowe conference room." Ariella glanced at Spencer. "You coming?" He shook his head. "Not this time." "You don't need me in there." She paused, then nodded. "You're right." As she walked past him, his hand brushed hers. No words, just the lightest touch, like a promise. The pitch went better than she could have imagined. Not because the room was warm, it wasn't, but because she refused to let their hesitation become her insecurity. She spoke with clarity, confidence, and without apology. For once, she didn't shrink herself to fit. By the time she returned to her office, her phone was buzzing. Spencer's name lit up the screen. "Did you watch?" she asked, dropping into her chair. "I didn't have to. Your assistant already said they applauded, only at the end. That's when it matters, she smiled. I think I might actually be good at this. I always knew you were, you barely knew me, I knew enough. There was a pause. Then, can you leave the office early today? She glanced at her calendar. Technically. Good, I need you to come with me. To where? I'll send a car. Pack something warm. The car arrived 20 minutes later. Ariella stepped in, still unsure where they were headed. The driver wouldn't answer her questions, only smiled politely and turned up the classical music. When they stopped, she stepped out into a private airstrip. A jet gleamed under the late afternoon sun. Spencer stood at the base of the stairs, wearing a charcoal coat and that impossible calm that made everything else feel like background noise. "You're unbelievable," she said, walking toward him. "You haven't seen the view yet. Where are we going?" He took her hand, guiding her up the steps. "You said once you'd never been to the mountains." "I meant the metaphorical kind," he smiled. "I didn't." The jet lifted off minutes later. Ariella stared out the window, still stunned. Snow-dusted peaks came into view, a vast, untouched stretch of winter wilderness. When they landed, a car waited. A short drive later, they pulled into a secluded chalet with glass walls, a roaring fire already lit inside, and a view that looked straight out of a dream. "Spencer." She breathed. "What is this? Someplace no one can interrupt us." She turned slowly, taking it all in. "You planned this. I had it ready. I just needed the right reason to use it. And I'm the reason. You're the only reason." That night they sat by the fire on a plush rug, wrapped in a blanket, the windows reflecting stars and snow. "I never thought I'd fall for someone like you," she said quietly. "Someone rich. Someone who makes me feel like I'm allowed to want more." He touched her cheek. "You've always been allowed." She leaned into his hand. "I want all of it, the work, the independence, but I want this too, you." He kissed her then, slow and deep. "Then you have me." Later, after the fire died down and silence wrapped around them, he pulled a small velvet box from his coat pocket. She stared at it, her breath catching. "Is that what I think it is?" "I wasn't going to give it to you yet," he said. "But then I realized I didn't want to wait anymore." Her fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside, a ring, simple, elegant, with a single sapphire at the center. "I don't need a perfect plan," he said. "I just need you to say yes." She didn't hesitate. "Yes." The next morning they stood on the balcony, wrapped in wool coats in each other's arms. Ariella looked out over the snow-covered trees, the sky painted in soft pink light. "I still can't believe I walked into the wrong room." Spencer kissed her temple. "Best mistake either of us ever made." And this time there were no doubts, just love undeniable, unstoppable, and entirely theirs. Ariella stood in front of the full-length mirror, barefoot on the hardwood floor of their New York penthouse. The morning sunlight streamed in through the tall windows, scattering gold across the marble and casting a soft glow over the satin robe that hung loosely from her shoulders. Behind her, the city pulsed with its usual rhythm, horns, distant sirens, the constant hum of life. But in here, everything was quiet. She reached up to fasten the delicate sapphire pendant around her neck, the same one Spencer had given her months ago, the same one she'd worn the day she said yes to him on the mountain. Her reflection stared back at her, not in disbelief, but in calm contentment. This wasn't a dream anymore. This was her life now. The sound of bare feet approaching made her turn. Spencer leaned against the doorframe, still in his white shirt from the night before, sleeves rolled up, top buttons undone. His hair was tousled, his jaw shadowed with the kind of stubble that only made him look more infuriatingly perfect. "You're awake early," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. "I couldn't stay in bed," she replied, smiling softly. "Too much in my head." "Cold feet?" he asked, stepping closer. "No, just surreal feet." He slipped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You know, most brides worry about the weather or the flowers. You're worried about metaphysics. Occupational hazard," she teased. "You did marry a strategist." "Technically, I haven't yet, but I'm about to change that." She turned in his arms, resting her hands on his chest. "Are you nervous?" He shook his head. Not even a little. I've made a lot of deals, Ariella, some with higher stakes than others. But this is the only one that's ever felt like the right kind of risk. Her brows lifted. You're comparing our marriage to a merger, he leaned in, brushing his lips against her temple. I'm saying I've never been more certain of anything. No prenup, no exit clause. I'm all in. Her heart stuttered at the quiet conviction in his voice. I know. They didn't need more words. The silence between them was filled with every promise they'd already made without speaking. Later that afternoon, the rooftop of Spencer's private Manhattan building had been transformed. Gone were the usual modern loungers and minimalist furniture. In their place, strings of soft white lights, cascading florals in shades of ivory and slate blue, and a clear tent that shielded guests from the spring breeze without blocking the view of the skyline. Ariella stepped onto the rooftop with her father at her side, the guests rising as one. She barely registered the faces, colleagues, old friends, even a few of Spencer's board members. Her eyes found only one person. He stood at the end of the aisle, waiting. No tuxedo, just a tailored deep navy suit, a simple boutonniere pinned to his lapel. But the look in his eyes made her forget everything else. As she reached him, Spencer took her hands and didn't let go. The officiant's words faded into background. It wasn't until the vows that the world came back into focus. I used to think control was power, Spencer said, his voice steady. That if I could plan every step, I'd never be vulnerable. Then you came crashing into my life, barefoot and soaking wet, and you didn't ask permission to change everything. You just did. And I've never been more grateful to be proven wrong. I don't want perfection, I want real. I want you every version of you. Today, tomorrow, and every day after. Ariella's voice trembled as she began. I never planned for this. You weren't part of the 5-year vision board, but you walked into my life like you'd always belonged in it. You saw me, all of me, not just the polished parts. And you never once asked me to be smaller. You made space. And then you stood in it with me. I don't need a map anymore. I have you. As the final words were spoken and the kiss sealed everything, the rooftop erupted in applause. But for them, there was only stillness wrapped in each other, a quiet certainty anchoring every heartbeat. That night, the reception glowed with soft jazz, floating candles, and the gentle clinking of champagne glasses. After the toasts and the dancing, after the cake and the tearful laughter, Spencer took her hand and led her away from the crowd. They stepped into the private elevator, and she tilted her head. Where are we going, you'll see? When the doors opened, they were in the penthouse again, but it wasn't the same. The lights had been dimmed. Dozens of soft white lanterns floated in the pool on the terrace. A table with dessert waited beneath the stars. He pulled her close. I didn't want to share you any more tonight. You didn't have to do all this. I didn't do it for the show. I did it because I wanted our first night to feel like ours, not the world's. She leaned into him, her voice low. You always know how to find the quiet inside the chaos. That's because I found you in the middle of mine. Time moved slowly after that. They danced alone, barefoot on the terrace, her head tucked beneath his chin, his arms wrapped around her like a promise. Sometime after midnight, curled on the couch wrapped in the throw blanket from their old hotel, sweet the one he insisted on keeping, they talked about everything and nothing. The way their lives had changed. The way they couldn't imagine them any other way. I used to think people like me didn't end up with people like you, she murmured, her fingers tracing his collarbone. He tilted her face up to his. You're wrong. About what? People like you are the reason people like me ever become more than just power and money. She smiled, soft and full. You've changed. You changed me. Months passed. Their days were filled with new campaigns, spontaneous weekend escapes, and a home that always smelled like fresh coffee and lavender. Ariella took over as head of brand strategy for the East Coast division of Lyra Tech, now fully independent and thriving. Spencer stepped back from constant board meetings, choosing instead to invest more time in the foundation, launching a mentorship program for underrepresented entrepreneurs. And on one quiet afternoon in early autumn, Ariella walked into their kitchen holding something in both hands, a small white stick, her expression unreadable. He looked up from his laptop. "What's that?" She set it down on the counter. He stared, then looked at her. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. Spencer didn't say anything. He walked around the island, pulled her into his arms, and held her like the world had just tilted all over again. "You're sure?" he finally asked. She nodded, laughing through tears. He kissed her, long and slow and full of wonder. When they lay in bed that night, her head on his chest, he said, "I never thought life could feel this full," she whispered. "It's only just beginning," and it was.